Steve Jobs was also home to this very same computer club, and after he watched the Steve Wozniak guy bring in his own computer week after week, the Steves eventually went up to one another and said, hey, maybe we should sell these things. Now you're probably thinking they came up with something brilliant in the garage which they called a workshop, but in 1975 the two boys released this thing. Yeah, that's right. This was actually the first device that these two geniuses ever worked on. It was a simple tool that could help you make long distance calls without having to pay. But that thing didn't take off, so they went back to the garage and made the Apple I. It didn't have a screen, it didn't have a mouse, it didn't have a keyboard, but it was able to run Angry Birds. Just kidding. The Apple I was just a circuit board that could basically do some simple calculations, and it cost a fortune at the time. 200 were ever made and 50 were sold, which resulted in a little over $30,000. Nice! Okay, well, we still have a little ways to go. $30,000 at the time wasn't bad at all. And this was all the proof that Steve Jobs needed. He knew that the future would have people that love computers, but not everyone who loves the idea of using a computer would be able to build it themselves. And the Apple I didn't really fit that new narrative. And so the two set off to make the Apple II. This time, they went with a different approach. They wanted to build a computer that was sold as the full package, instead of the previous one, which was only a circuit board. The problem was, it was impossible with the technology at the time. But wait, Steve Wozniak didn't believe that. He started combining different chips and looked through manuals to find chips that could multitask. After doing that over and over, a few times later he ended up with a computer that had very few chips. Not only could this one do the same simple calculations as the Apple I, but it was also able to produce colored graphics and patterns right on the built-in screen. Cool. It's cheaper to produce, more compact, and it's even more capable than the Apple I. But it is still ugly. It's still a hunk of chips and wires, and it looked pretty threatening to someone who isn't a wizard with computers. And that's where Steve Jobs comes in. While Wozniak was the engineer behind the computers, Steve Jobs was the marketer. He was one of the first people in the world to realize that technology was not just a tool, but it could also form a personal connection with the user.
You can have many views of what a computer is. My particular view is that a computer is a new medium.
He knew just how to make something look nice, and he also knew how to sell it to people. So they fit all of this junk into a sleek, simple, friendly casing that made the computer very inviting to general consumers. And with the new design, it was clear they had no problem selling it to people because the Apple II was released in 1977. And by the end of its production life, it had sold 6 million units. Apple was now worth approximately $2 billion, which was a lot of money at the time. But that's still pretty far from what we know it as today. Due to the success, it was time for the company to kick into high gear.